Okay, hi everybody. This is Miranda from Conversations in Anarchy, and today we have the first of our speaker interviews for Anarchapulco this year. This one is one that I kind of pushed for at the help of my loving partner. He got me into Decode Your Reality, and I think this is something that is really important for people at Anarchapulco to talk about, because if we can't decode ourselves and we can't decode our reality, what do we really know about the world around us? So without further ado, we have Logan Jayson here. Logan, how are you doing?
Doing great, thank you. I'm your first. I'm honored. I'm thankful that you brought me on, and I'm the first. Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, we should have technically gotten started sooner, but with the holidays, everything kind of a bit crazy. But yeah, I have two others scheduled with other speakers that I know pretty well. One you might be interested in, he's a guy named Adam Bigelson, and he does holographic blood testing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, super interesting. He takes a drop of your blood and takes live images of what he sees in it, and they interpret it, and they tell you everything from like body structure issues to like hormone issues to emotional issues, just seeing it in your blood.
Are you talking about dark field microscopy?
I don't know if that's what it's called.
Yeah. So if they're pricking your finger and they're putting it on a slide and putting it under a microscope, it's called dark field microscopy, and I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah, his dad developed their own way of going about it in terms of his dad is, I don't remember his first name, but his dad is like the famous Dr. Bigelson that, ended up having to move to Tijuana and stuff because he was getting persecuted in the United States for doing these sorts of things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I'm excited for that one. But yeah, I'm going to jump into it. Like I had mentioned before, I have a list of questions. The first one's kind of general. I know you're in Playa del Carmen. I'm curious as to what led you there and what your thoughts of that area as well as Mexico in general are.
Yeah, great question. So I started in 2020. I moved to San Miguel de Allende, and it was just a temporary thing. I didn't know what I had in store for me. I had a friend living there. That's just north of Mexico City, about 3 hours. Really amazing city. And then my friend Santos Bonacci was I'm in Puerto Morelos, which is in between Playa del Carmen and Cancun, like literally the halfway point between the two cities. And so when I got here, I kind of fell in love with the area. It's a small fishing town. It's right on the beach. So I moved here, and I of course going back and forth with the visas and all that stuff. And it's an amazing town. It's growing like crazy right now. So it's not the small town that I came into it to be in 2021, but it's definitely a little gem, and it's very close in proximity of Tulum's about an hour and a half away as well if you want to go down there and do something there. So it's a great location.
Yeah, I've never been in that part of the country. Most people know that I'm kind of an illegal here, so I tend to avoid places where immigration exists. Yeah, I've lived in Mexico almost 10 years without papers, somewhat publicly, I think my boyfriend told you there's a whole show about the whole anarchist community in Acapulco that happened and all of that, but that also tells the story that I'm talking about. But I have heard really good things about that. Actually, a friend of mine, you probably know, he said he had met you there, I think in 2020 or 2021. His name's Richard Valentine, short little Englishman.
Oh, yeah. That was when I was doing a Syncretism Society with Santos and Danny, yeah.
Yeah, he said he had met you because he and I were actually talking about numerology and decoding stuff, and I brought you up, and he's like, "Oh, I know Logan," and I was like, "Oh, well, he'll be at Anarchapulco this year, by the way." So there's that. You can
nice.
That, yeah. So my next question is: your bio says that you're a metaphysician, which I've also heard you mention in your podcast. What does that mean exactly?
Well, my interpretation of it, the metaphysical, the quantum, I'm talking being able to help people heal by discovering your aspects of your meta self, so to speak, meaning that the body's structure into matter comes from spirit, and all that layer of the onion that we are as human beings from spirit into matter can be measured with letters, numbers, and symbols. So as a metaphysician, talking again to the quantum realm and, particles and all that stuff, but it's all relative to letters, numbers, and symbols. So the metaphysician and part of what I do is showing people how to become the best version of yourself by studying the codes such as astrology, numerology, and all the letters, numbers, and symbols that come with that.
Yeah. So just to plug what you do a little bit, I know you do your podcast where you decode all sorts of things, including first decode I actually saw by you was your holy shit decode.
Yeah, that's a good one to start with.
It's a good one to start with, but it was really interesting. And it kind of like, because sometimes like watching your videos, it's like I see the connections, but my brain is also like, how did you think to check the periodic table?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
did all of this come from? But like that one's a good one to dive into because it's easy to wrap your head around most of what you're talking about on that. So for anybody watching not familiar, go check that one out. So that's really interesting. But I also know that you do readings. You do various types of readings for people to help them kind of decode themselves. Can you tell me a little bit about those?
Yeah, the readings that I offer, I have 3 different readings. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. My number 1 and number 2 reading, the reading's identical, and it involves astrology using masteringthezodiac.com, comparing that with the stellarium-web.org website, the canopy of the sky. I don't get into tropical. I feel tropical is a subsystem below the sidereal, which is the true master system. But then we embed that with the life path and the birthday numerology. We embed that with the name numerology on the birth certificate. And then we also include human design as well. And we can bring in the tarot and the playing cards, a typical deck of playing cards, these cards right here, these are embedded into the astrological chart. So the methodology that I've been shown to use involves all these great systems, and they're all synchronized along with the periodic table and science and all and mathematics as well. So.
Yeah, I'm curious because I know myself what the deal with the true sidereal system is and why it's more accurate. But can you kind of explain here quickly how you came to that and why it matters more than the tropical?
Well, okay, so I don't dismiss the tropical system. This tropical astrologies. I know there's a lot of people that have grown to love that system, and they believe like, oh my God, this is who I am. So there is truth and merit in that system. But if you're looking for precision, and I'm all about that, I'm all about like, how can I get as close as I can to origins? That's what I'm after as a metaphysician. So I feel like, and the best way I can describe it is that the master wheel, the wheel in the sky, is based upon like the gears of a clock. So the master wheel is the sidereal, and underneath that is the tropical. So it's a smaller wheel that spins with the master wheel of the sidereal. Now you have to go to masteringthezodiac.com. I did a podcast with him. His name is Athen, like the Athens, Greece, and he's a really amazing human being. And what he did was very ingenious. He took the actual sizes of the constellations and he put them on a map, and it's all color coded, and it's amazing. And that changes a lot of things for people because we're normally accustomed to tropical, where every house of astrology is broken down evenly in 30-degree increments. But when you look at the canopy, that's not accurate, because Aries is a very small zodiac sign, and Virgo, the largest, is way bigger than Aries. So how could you put that into a 30-degree window and provide accuracy with that? So that was my challenge. I started with tropical. I started with Placidus. I moved into the whole signs. Then I moved into Vedic sidereal. And then I found the Mastering the Zodiac. And I fought that system for a little bit. I had several people introduce me to it. And I was still studying under the Vedic. I was into the nakshatras, and I was studying the cosmology and the astronomy of that. So I didn't want to move away. And I finally ended up refining myself and going into the Mastering the Zodiac. So it's not you could say it's sidereal, but it really is the master system, I feel.
Yeah, we kind of like in my household refer to it as true sidereal because
True sidereal, yeah.
It is more accurate to what's actually happening in the sky. And like there's also a whole nother sign. I know you know this, Ophiuchus, which like that one's interesting. One of my best friends is actually Ophiuchus, and she's resistant. She's like, no, I'm Sagittarius. And I'm like, yeah, but you're Ophiuchus.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I even created a new calendar, which is, it's not nothing new on the calendar system, but it's a new date. And so the official new year that I have adopted as my truth is December 13th. It's not January 1st. Of course, there are many new years, right? Chinese New Year coming up in February. Everybody's got it right? So everybody has the layer of their onion, but December 13th is when the sun is in Ophiuchus. And the reason why Ophiuchus is included is because the foot of Ophiuchus, moves over the ecliptic. Normally, how a constellation is designated as part of the round table is it has to be across the ecliptic, the imaginary line that these zodiac signs sit on. And Ophiuchus has 51. Ophiuchus is the star that's designated, and it's the foot that pushes itself over the ecliptic, and it sits and sandwiched in between Scorpio and Sagittarius. And what's so amazing about this placement is this is the navel of Vishnu. So you can get into the Vedic aspects and the cosmic, and this is the galaxy center. So Ophiuchus with serpents sits right there in the center of the galaxy, that's like profound.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. I have one of my planets in Ophiuchus. To me,
which
like,
one?
I'll check quickly. I have it written down somewhere
Okay.
here. But like I found that really interesting because I don't know a whole lot about Ophiuchus yet, but I do know that I'm kind of drawn to it. And that's why I told my friend, I was like, embrace it. You're like the strange one. My north node, and it's in my seventh house.
Oh, wow. Wow, North Node. Okay, yeah. So that's Rahu's desire. So, Rahu, the North Node, is, literally like what's going to liberate you from the materialism and all that is Rahu. Rahu being the demon, right? The desire. Mm-hmm. Like if I say, what do you desire? Well, I can tell you right now, just by knowing that your Ophiuchus is occupied by Rahu. Well, Ophiuchus is a hierarchy of Scorpio and in essence, the occult. Right. So you're bridging into a higher frequency, so to speak, with Ophiuchus. And when you bring Rahu in there, Rahu's forced to, sit in that hotel. I like to call the astrology signs hotels. And so when it's visiting that hotel and renting a room from that space, it has to yield to that energy. And so Rahu brings the desires to your life, and it's in Ophiuchus where a major desire for you is going to be the higher frequencies of the occult and the secrets of life. And you're doing this Anarchapulco and whatever else you're doing, but I'm sure that fits in the narrative of your life.
Yeah, no, that checks out like pretty well. I know you're into human design, and I am a nerd about human design. And
what's your human design?
I'm a manifesting generator.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm with 6-2 profile line, so I'm the role model hermit, and I mean, and that checks out. Like, I had a friend do a reading for me back in 2020 randomly. She does it for a business, but she's like, I know a little bit about your story. Let me do a reading for you. And she basically told me, first 30 years of your life will be chaos. You might not make it out. But from 30 to 50, you're going to go into a hermit phase. And at 50, you're going to emerge as the role model. And like that brought tears to my eyes because I was coming out of all this trauma. I experienced a murder. I lived in Mexico. I can't go to the United States because I got charges. I got all this crazy shit that happened in my first 30 years. And I was feeling the need to like withdraw and do the hermit thing. But I'm like, is this a trauma response? Or is this who I am? Turns out this is where I'm at in my phase because I'm about to be 32 now. So it's really, it helped me fully understand first why all this crazy shit happened. It helped me know, okay, I'm going to get a break from all of that. And then it helps me understand relationships. It helps me understand my friends. Anarchapulco, we do team human design readings to figure out how to work together. I mean, it's cool. My favorite tool personally.
Yeah, it's an amazing system. And so there's even two systems with that. You probably know that. You have the original by Rahu Ra, based on the sun, and then you have the cosmic human design, which is more sidereal based. And that may change some of the parameters in your system.
How do I? Oh my God.
Yeah. But I mean, the manifesting generators that's like my favorite type because you're the only type that blends the two together of initiation, manifester, and the generator, the workaholic. So when you're kind of like the one woman show here. And I kind of like look at the manifesting generators like, you rub the lamp, the genie pops out and the genie's like, your wish is my command. And you're like, I don't even need you because the manifestors, what they're really good at, one of the tools that they have, as you know, is visualization. Right? Because you're here to initiate your ideas and then place them into the generator type where you can work them out and create some stimuli. So that is an amazing thing. And then you have your strategy, which is to push that stimuli out onto the world stage. So manifesting generator, man, there's some big names on the world stage that are manifesting generators, famous ones.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny about that because Rebecca, who you've interacted with as the stage manager, she and I both are manifesting generators.
Oh, okay.
And our other producer, Kat, who's like one of my best friends, she's just a generator. And she has described working with Rebecca and I like we're two race horses, and
Mhm.
she has one foot on each of us.
Uh-huh.
And we're just going, and she's just holding on for dear life as we just do.
Uh,
And I mean,
what's your birthday? Just your month and day.
it's February 18th.
Oh, okay, February. So you're a seven. Okay, so you see, you're a seven of diamonds. So when you bring the playing cards into it, that has another amazing layer to it. And that seven of diamonds, of course, fits with Libra. And you said Libra is occupied by Ophiuchus with your Rahu there. So the seven of diamonds is your birth card, and that's the 33rd card in the deck. And 33 is the vertebrae that we have. 33 is the crucifixion date. So that story talks about climbing Jacob's ladder to reach the face of God, which is the pineal gland, right? And so this is the card that you were given. And this is a very esoteric, very metaphysical card. And the sevens are the mystics. So no matter which way you slice it, seven of diamonds, seven of clubs, seven of spades, seven of hearts, these people, yourself, you are born and bred to be a mystic, and you sit in the crown position. So, what is the seventh day of creation? The rest day. So you're sitting in the crown. So what would you be doing? You'd be reviewing everything underneath you. And that's what you're constantly doing. Sevens are analyzing the reality around them, and they're trying to figure out how to critique it, to make it better, to make it more approachable in life. And then you take the manifesting generator and the 18. 18 is tied to the word Adam, the original Hebrew spelling for Adam, the first man. 18, Jesus 18, Christ 18. So you have the 33 card, and your birthday falls on the 18th. And that's very special and significant.
I'm also a 33 life path in or in
Uh,
numerology. So there's
yeah.
that too, which is kind of hilarious. I was actually going to ask you about that card because I watch a lot of like your what's your questions thing, and sometimes you mention the cards, but at least in the ones I've seen, I hadn't seen you talk about the seven of diamonds, so I was curious. I've also heard you mention the concept of the spirit card, and I'm curious about how you determine that and like what does that mean in relation to the rest of you, you know?
Yeah, great question. Well, you have a very unique set of cards because most people have an ego card. Okay, so the cards have a very specific system to them, like human design astrology, and there are two like charts side by side, and the one chart is your life spread. I call it the ego spread, and that's where you're going to find your seven of diamonds. And if you look to the other side, there's going to be a display of cards there, and you just look to the same position of where your seven of diamonds is, and that is the nine of hearts. And the nine of hearts is a card of wish fulfillment, right? So it's really, the seven of diamonds is a card where you may not want to have materialism. You may be like analyzing life and figuring out like, what's really worthy to me, because that moves into the seven of pentacles, which is the card in the tarot is like it's God looking at all, it's collected everything, and it's looking at all of its materialistic desires, and it's saying, which ones do I want to keep? Which ones do I want to get rid of? So you're constantly analyzing that. And that's a Libra, because you need to balance the scales out with that. So the nine of hearts comes in, which is the card of Pandora's box. It's the wish fulfillment card. The nines are the endings and completions. So there is for you in your reality, the diamond suit, these people are I want. The diamonds is physicality. So if you're an ace of diamonds, seven of diamonds, queen of diamonds, the primary function in your life is what can I obtain? I want. But then you have the nine of hearts, which is I feel. So you feel this desire of the completion through the number nine. And it's very complex from there because you can get into the hermit in the major arcana and being that wisdom, et cetera, being tied to Sagittarius. Where's your Zeus placement at? That's a thing as well. Where's your Venus placement in astrology? These cards will fit into the astrological charts. And then you can start to see it really unfold. And then you add the human design life path, and it just becomes so grandiose.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it's interesting that I've heard you say the thing about the pentacles and the diamonds to be I want. And I remember you saying that in a podcast, and I was sitting with my boyfriend, and I just laughed, and I was like, yeah, that's me. But also the I feel thing is really interesting as well, because that is in essence, the way that I function, because like I
Yeah.
have the 33, but I also believe that 33s, we hold a lot of the powers of the six, because there's a master number, but it
Of
also, I
course.
think on some level, everybody reduces down. And I am absolutely in all these ways, a six. It's just the more that I learn about all these different things, like I also like the Chinese zodiac. I'm a rooster in that. I like all of these little things and how they fit together. Um, because it's really kind of fascinating to not just learn who you are, because most of it's all just been kind of validation of what I already knew about myself, but maybe might have been afraid to honor. And I think that's, in my opinion, why doing all of this research is, there's a lot of people out there that's like, it's woo-woo, it's stupid, who cares? And it's like, it does matter.
Totally.
It does matter how you're going to show up in this world and how others are going to deal with you.
Yep. Absolutely. So it's this methodology that I'm bringing to the table. How did I discover it? Because the voice in my head told me to do it, right? So I'm big on predestination, and the predestination is how you're coded and scripted. So once you start to study astrology and numerology and human design and personality types and Enneagram and all these things, you're going to start to see like, wow, how is this so accurate for me? Well, because you see, this is how you incarnated with all these layers. So when you specifically come in on February 18th, there's a day attached to that through the Gregorian number on the calendar. So there's going to be a thing there for you. And you can bounce off of these dates to figure out and calculate some things in your life. Astrology connects to everything, the 13 signs, the 12 houses. These connect to the alchemical elements, hydrogen, helium, lithium, first house, second house, third house. It just becomes very, very easy to see. It's just simply just putting a puzzle together. That's all we're doing. So the methodology here is to bring in as many tools as I can as a code breaker, as somebody who's a fan of the metaphysical world, to see what am I doing here? What is my incarnation? And during Anarchapulco, like you're getting a plethora of code that everybody's doing their individualistic work, but all working as, the gears in a clock, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has a piece of it. So it becomes very harmonious.
Anarchapulco in itself, like we often have people, myself included, this will be my, I think, 10th Anarchapulco out of 11. And it feels like a portal of energy gets opened in that way. And it does, and it's exactly like what you were talking about. It's kind of like we're all gears in this big clock working together, and you get all these connections, because that's the value of it. Like the speeches are cool, but the true value is the connections that we all make there. I wanted to go back to the predestination thing because I have heard you talk a lot about that, and I find that concept to be super interesting. And I have my own kind of like spin on how I feel that works, because I think there's like a balance, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on it. I don't know if you've ever read any books. They're usually for kids, but like younger people, that is. But like a choose your own destiny book, where like you get the first chapter, and at the end of the chapter, it goes, to make this choice, go to page 47. To make this choice, go to page 53, and so on and so forth. And then you go through and you can get different outcomes, but the core events of that story are still more or less the same. That's kind of how I view the predestination thing, because obviously we have some ability to make choices. Like when I got arrested, I could have stayed and handled my stuff in Ohio, or I could have went to Mexico. Made the choice to come to Mexico, and that unfolded things as it is. What are your thoughts on that with your view of predestination?
Yeah, well, I've kicked this whole free will thing around for so many years. I've gone back and forth. I sound like a contradiction machine, right? Robert Sapolsky, I don't know if you know his work, but he does a great job at describing that you do not have any free will. Not that it matters that he has degrees and all that stuff. That doesn't really make it more, believable. But he does postulate using real examples and science to back up that you don't have free will. So the choice is the illusion. So it's kind of like if you look at a lightning bolt in nature, you're going to see the main bolt come through, and then there's going to be branches, just like a tree has the tree trunk, and then all the branches, and they branch off. That's life. And no matter which door you go down, no matter which option you decide upon, it was already chosen for you. So the choice looks like, oh yeah, I know I could have did this, but I did that. So what changed your mind? What was the deciding factor? Your emotions. So I believe that your emotions are the only free will that you have. And the emotions is a energy that gets harvested. So when you have an energy of like fear, right, and it moves you to something, like what makes a lot of people great in life is fear of not being able to live up to their name, or fear of being wrong, or fear of not getting it right, or a doctor operating on somebody, the fear of them making a mistake and killing that person on the operating table. When they do that over and over, they become great doctors, right, if it's in their destiny. But nonetheless, the choice that you make in your life is based upon an emotional reaction. And that, what I think, is the aspects of free will. I'm not opposed to postulating that we have free will towards like, oh, I'm going to buy a new cell phone. But how many times have we seen this where something happens, and then I've used this example many times before. You're in the kitchen and you break a glass and you cut your hand. You would call that an accident, and the cut's so bad you got to go to the hospital and get stitches. So you go to the hospital and you meet the nurse who works on you, and you end up exchanging numbers, and you end up marrying the nurse. Mm-hmm. Like, was that a choice that you cut your hand? It happens. This happens a lot to people. When you get into an accident, these things. So are these choices? I don't think so. I think that these are just doors that we go into. And they're already chosen for us and mapped out for us. And the reactions that we give off, that's the free will. And that's being harvested. So the Greeks call that ambrosia, right? The Greeks are siphoning the energy, which is the zodiac, the Mazzaroth, the constellations, right? The stars above. As above, so below. What happens above happens below. So if you end up adopting that as your truth, what happens above happens below. That means that what happens below is controlled by what happens above. So we're kind of the secondary. We're the subordinate in the subordinate position.
That's really interesting to consider. And when you put it that way, that's true. Like, to use my own situation as an example, like I made all of those decisions, based off of your right emotion. For example, like it would have never occurred to me to become a fugitive and flee to another country had I not had, for example, the childhood that I had. My mom was a fugitive within the state of Ohio, but still a fugitive for pretty much my whole childhood. And, when I think back, it was not so much here's a pros and cons list. I'm making a decision. It was like, I just have to do this. Yep. And then before I knew it, I was in Mexico and I was involved with Jeff's community, and like, there was a long time where I kind of gave myself a lot of shit for that. But looking back, I don't think I would change any of the choices that I made, even the objectively bad ones, because the life that I have now is way better than the life that I often tell people, like, if you would have told me when I was 18 that by 30, I would be living in Mexico illegally for almost 10 years, working online, doing circus stuff, because I do like aerial arts and stuff here in Mexico, and doing all of this stuff, I would have been like, you need to get your head checked.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, think about, go ahead, finish. I want you to finish.
Yeah, I went to college and I was trying to do the normie way of things. I ended up dropping out of college because at a certain point, like, I was raised by hippies and music festivals. I was not meant to be in, some normie life, but like, it is interesting to see how these things go,
Totally. I mean, if you think about the ridiculousness of the simplicity of what you've described. So you're a fugitive, right? Meaning that there's prison involved, right? And you flee to Mexico and you end up becoming part of Anarchapulco. And Anarchapulco has the word anarchy in it. And of course, what is the whole concept of that? Breaking free of something, right? Causing a disruption to break people out of a prison. So your precursor to get to Anarchapulco was the fugitive aspect, on the run, hiding from the law, being the outlaw. And that's what anarchy is. So the ridiculousness and the simplicity of your story is, as profound as it is, it's scripted.
Yeah, I feel that, because there are certain things where sometimes my boyfriend and I will be talking and then he'll just be like, yep, that's proof that this reality is scripted because this and this is happening on this day, with this energy. And it's just like, yeah. And I think a lot of people might look at the whole predestination thing and be like, damn. So what's the point?
I get it a lot. That's like probably the biggest thing I get from people. Like, okay, well, what's the point then? The point is to discover what the hell you're doing here, to figure out. And then once you confirm it, when you do what so many people do and confirm, like you get a reading, right? Or you interpret your chart, or you start reading and doing your own research, and you see these revelations and you're like, oh my God, like that's so me. How does somebody write about you that doesn't know you? Because it's in the script, right? These are the laws, the standards. And when you discover it, you confirm, like, that's totally who I am. Then you have no fear, because now you don't need permission. We often reach out to people to get, like, should I do this? Mm-hmm. Asking somebody else what you think you should do with your life is the worst thing to do, because you're asking somebody who has a different code than you what you should do with your life. And it's not going to be the wrong move, right? Because I don't believe right or wrong. Right or wrong are silly adjectives. There is just the path. That's it, right? There's just a path. And when somebody says, do this, and you do it, and you're like, man, I never should have did that. Yeah, I know, but what did it teach you? Because life is a teacher, right? And you're getting an emotional reaction off of saying, man, how was your year? It was terrible. Why'd you have a terrible year? Maybe because you're supposed to have a terrible year. Why do we have to have a reason for having a terrible year, month, day? It's just, I had one. Now you have contrast, and now you can, that's why I have my gratitude on my shirt. I'm a huge gratitude junkie. Why? Because I value life in all its totality, because the greatest teacher is normally pain and suffering. So we want to avoid that. How do we avoid pain and suffering? Well, it's unavoidable, right? But we can limit that by discovering what we're coded as and how we're supposed to show up. And when you do that with no remorse, when you do that with no defense, you just be yourself. You're not only free, but you no longer need the treasure map. Once you discover who you are, you don't need a treasure map anymore. So studying the code, astrology, Enneagram, numbers, it's nonstop for me. But once you study your code, you never have to ask permission anymore. You become one with the divine. And I feel like that we are all God. We're all the divine having a human being experience. Whether we could say it's a star up in the sky, that may be a thing. Like there's a star in the sky that's connected to you being born on February 18th, specifically being the 7 of diamonds, being the 9 of hearts, being the manifesting generator. There's a specific star in the sky that's your representative, and it's using you so it can experience this reality called Earth. This is the greatest show on Earth, man. The greatest show on Earth is this reality, as far as we know. And there could be a waiting list to get in. I've said this before. There may be a waiting list. There may be a spiritual waiting list to get into this reality. And people bitch and complain, and they're like, they just focus on the pessimistic stuff. Where's the gratitude in your life? So when you flip it into gratitude, and I'm talking about, like, I wake up every day and I'm giving thanks to my bed and my pillow and my air conditioner and my fan. I'm giving thanks to my teeth when I brush them. Literally. I have a lot of my body parts named. A lot of my body parts, I've named them. So when I'm going to the bathroom, I'm talking to my bladder, thank you. And I have a name for it, which I don't tell anybody because it's private. But why do I name my bladder? Because I respect my temple. And I've named it, and now it's personal. So now I can talk to it, and I can tell it how much I appreciate it. Talk to my kidneys. How many times are we grateful for our kidneys for filtering all that stuff that we drink, or our stomachs for dissolving the foods and providing us satiation? We don't do these things, but that's the level that I'm at, because I've become one with the divine, and the divine is all of us. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that. And also what I was going to say earlier with the predestination thing is, people, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? And it's like, don't you realize there's a freedom in predestination itself, because you don't have to worry about all the little bullshit. The only thing you have to worry about is the way you respond to things, which is way easier than having to figure out the plan,
Bingo.
As a manifesting generator, I'm here to respond. So I have to wait for shit to come my way, and then I choose to respond. I'm not supposed to go after it and run after it, which so many people get caught up on that, when generators are 70% of, the world population. So like that to me is, there's such a big freedom in that.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And that's the value in like, okay, so let's just hypothetically say that the emotions is our free will, right? Hypothetically. Okay, well, if that's a true thing, right? Hypothetically, well, then don't you want to know how you're going to react? So how would you find that out? Studying your numbers. Numbers are personalities. Studying your astrological, like where's your Mars at? If you have Mars in Aries, you're probably going to be a hothead. You're probably going to have a challenge with anger. You're going to want to be first in everything you do. And when you become second, that may piss you off. That's an emotional reaction. So if you stop doing that, Mars is like, where's my food? You know, like Mars is like, I'm hungry. So I'm going to send somebody into your life today and they're going to piss you off. And I'm going to see how you're going to react. And if you react and you get really pissed off, I get my food. This is the ambrosia that the Greeks were talking about. You know, and this is a thing because, you know, if you study the Greeks, which I'm fascinated by the language, the alphabet, you know, Ptolemy and the constellations and the 40. You study Hesiod and the stories of Prometheus and Zeus and all that. Around the same time, you had the Old Testament being created, but in different parts of the world, and they didn't have cell phones to say, "Hey, did you read my book?" They didn't have printing presses. So they weren't sharing these ideas. So how does a culture come out with the gods and the Olympians and Zeus and Ares and then you have the Bible talking about Moses and Abraham? These are just different cultures talking about the same thing, right? But they're not sharing these ideas. So mythology is just as valid as theology, which is just as valid as astrology and numerology. Notice they all start with ology. Astrology, numerology, theology, mythology, they all end in ology. There's a thing to that. When that's a code that was coded that way, and you can break it down with letters with the numerology aspect, and you can get a deeper insight, and you could start to study grammar and, you know, you know, the sentences and how they're formed, and you get into adjectives and verbs, and it becomes so amazing. It's a masterful system that is so complex, and I like to say it's imperfectly perfect.
Yeah.
This reality that we live in.
Yeah, I agree. And that reminds me of one of the questions I have here is I was curious, like the way I wrote it is if you had to pick, because you have all these tools you use, right? And if you had to pick only one of the tools that you use, as in like which one's your favorite, which would it be?
Man, that's a tough one. Well, I probably would do astrology because it has the numbers embedded into it already. Whereas numerology, if you just had numerology, you wouldn't know astrology. You couldn't connect it. Astrology has the 12 houses with the 13 signs. So you automatically have numerology embedded into it. So it'll probably be that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would choose human design because from, you know, as you know, what makes it up is all of these systems combined into one. Not all of them, but most of them. It's got the secret sauce of everything, which I'm going to look into this other version of human design because I somehow haven't heard of that. But
oh, okay, yeah, it's a sidereal.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to talk to my friend about it. My friend Nova, she's spoken at Anarchapulco in the past, but you had mentioned like, how can these people write this book about me that don't even know me? I had met her briefly. She was a friend of a friend. I had met her briefly. We had maybe a 2-minute conversation. And then for her to look at my chart and just give me down to the fact that like, I exist better with external sounds. So when I'm eating, when I'm working, when I'm digesting, I need to have external sound of some kind to function better. And I was always the kid that was doing my homework. Now the adult that's doing my at-home work with Netflix on because my brain doesn't focus if there's not some sort of nonsense noise in the background.
Oh, interesting.
So it's interesting, like, to have somebody just like dissect me. She sent me like hours of voice messages, just like, and this is what I see, and this is what I see. And I was just like, I was pretty agnostic at that point. I was like, what in the hell? Like, what? But it sent me down this, you know, pretty deep rabbit hole, you know, as I know you know.
Yeah. Well, I commend you on your choice of human design. 64 numbers of the ancient I Ching, 64 squares on a chessboard, 64 possible codons on our DNA. And the 64th element on the periodic table is the God element. It's gadolinium, which is the acronym is GD. That's God. So 64 is you're talking about the GD element, so it's very fascinating. And even with the ridiculousness of these gates where, like the game of life in numerology is 59 and the 59th gate is the gate of intimacy. So
Yeah, that whole channel, that baby making channel.
yeah,
Yeah.
59 and 6 is, I mean, if you got that connected there, man, you better watch out. You got some fertile, intimacy going on. Even with Hanson Robotics, now you get into transhumanism. Hanson Robotics is actually using the I Ching for their symbol. Have you ever heard of Hanson Robotics?
I've heard of it, but I didn't know they were using that for their symbol.
Yeah, their logo is the I Ching. And of course, they created the first robot who became a citizen. It's Sophia. And that symbol for their logo is gate number 16 in the human design. That is the Sophia gate, because that's the wisdom that pours down and it connects to gate number 48, which is the gate of Prometheus. And that's about stealing wisdom and giving it to humans. And that's the well. Gate 48 is the well. 16 to 48 is Sophia and Prometheus. It's amazing. And Hanson Robotics comes out with Sophia, and that's what they have for their logo is gate number 16 in the I Ching. It's so amazing. I just get so enamored by this stuff.
Wild about that you bring up that specific project is one of my side hustles that I work on is I work for a PR company. I won't name the name of it, but they've been functioning for years and years and years. And they were actually part of Sophia's PR team that was getting news out there into the world. And so that's it's real interesting but like none of this is truly coincidence. It's all
no. I mean, even Sophia in Greek is 16. The Greek numerology, ancient Greek, Sophia is 16.
That's wild.
Really wild. These are the tools that are undeniable and that cements the aspect of, and again, are these people that are creating these, how far and how deep are they going when they're creating them? See, for me, like, I don't ever pick things on the calendar. I don't like consciously choose. And then when I go back and I decode it, there's the code that's scripted. It's just, can't be the only person. So no, I have over 600 videos that I've decoded bands. I've decoded famous people. I've decoded, people, places, and things. And they would all have to be on this big conspiracy to try to get one past you. And that's absurd. Yeah, it's absurd to think that.
One of my favorite things that you decode is the show Lucifer. I watched that show while working in the background at least 3 times. It's one of my favorites, but it's just like, and it's funny because like, I'm not like, I don't like the police and I'm also not a Christian, but I find the combination of the two, how they combine them in that, like completely fascinating. It's super well done. But like, then to hear you talking about it, I always tune in to those parts specifically. Like you're right. It's too big. And like, I do like to look at the energy of the day and like plan like, oh, for example, I have a new lawyer that I'm trying to get to fix my issues. Today's a rooster day. I contacted him today. And I do find when you follow the energy, it at least makes things more interesting. For example, 11 days, you can expect people to be emotional on 11 days. So if you see some people flipping out for no reason, you can laugh and, okay, they're just flipping out for no reason. It's an 11 day. They're just NPCs playing the script hardcore, as far as I'm concerned. But
sure.
Yeah, and on that note, this isn't even on my list, but what's your concept of the whole NPC thing?
I think he's an NPC.
Yeah. Okay.
We are all non-player characters. Everybody.
It's wild to consider that.
It is. And I know, I kind of joke, people were talking about this Anarchapulco, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be the black sheep of that event because I'm the guy who's going to tell you you're an NPC, and that pisses people off because they like, no, I'm not. Prove to me you're not. You can't, but I can break the code down to show you are.
What I will say is there probably will be a few people that have that feeling, but you'll be surprised the majority of Anarchapulco people, they're already decoding themselves in some way.
I'm sure.
They're into all of these things. Like I learned about all of these things through people I met at these events,
Right.
So I don't think that you're necessarily going to get that. And I know, and Jeff, he doesn't always watch the speeches live, but he does go back and watch the replays. And I know for a fact that Jeff is going to watch your speech and be like, yep, simulation. It's all a simulation. Who cares? I'm just going to sit here with my Tesla machine and meditate for 6 hours, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm so happy to come and be a part of this. You know what I really want to do, and I'm just being very vulnerable right now. I would love to do some like tarot readings for people, just like have people come up and have a little table and just do it just complimentary and just rifle through a whole bunch of people. That would be really cool. That would be kind of like my gift to the event.
The easiest way to do that is at the end of your speech, just
To
announce,
say it.
hey, I'm going to be here in this spot and come find me.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'll send people over because I find myself, especially last year, because I work a lot with the sponsors and stuff. So I'm all like, what year were you born in? Let me decode you a little bit. And they always want to know where to find more. So I can point people in your direction. I think that's something that Anarchapulco needs. And I think there's some of it, but there's too many people that are like, oh, there's these things, but it's in the past been not so practical. If you do watch the series about Anarchapulco, you'll see that I'm a pretty critical voice. And it was like anarchy school of like, here, we're going to tell you how to anarchy. But like it was, here's the problems and the world sucks and that's it. And it's like, okay, but now we're starting to introduce more with solutions, which is part of why I fought to get you on the schedule. Cause I'm like, no, he's giving us the information to actually know who we are so we can know how we're going to respond to all the rest of this, the vaccines thing and the taxes thing and all the other bullshit that people worry about, when really you just kind of have to take care of yourself and take care of your community, and that's it.
Yeah. No, well said. Well, I mean, amen to that. I mean, that's like a mic drop statement right there with all the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also wanted to ask, because you talked a little bit about doing the readings at the end, ideally, but what exactly are you planning on offering what's your speech going to be about? Can you give us a small teaser?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I already filled out the form, right, months ago when Rebecca asked me for it, and I had said the title of my presentation will be scripted reality. And so I'm like, I don't have it finalized yet because I don't think I'll finalize it until a couple weeks before I go. And put all my slides together. I have so many presentations that I've done over the years, and the ones that I've come out with lately, especially the "You Are God," the Tower of Ra, the connection between Ra and the Yod of the Bible, and confirming that the God of the Bible is Ra. These are layers I probably are going to present to the world, and you got to be someone who is looking at as a code breaker, right? But to show the scripted reality, I got 26 of them now. It's a series, scripted reality, to show that we're being used as instruments, and it's not a bad thing, right? Once you know it's actually, like you said, it's very liberating.
Yeah.
Because you stop, like when we try to control and it doesn't go our way, what do we normally do? We have an emotional reaction of upset or frustration, especially as a manifesting generator, right? Manifesting generators, if you start to get frustrated, what are you supposed to do? Go back to the origination, which is I'm a creator, right? Generator, manifesting generator, man. So if when you get frustrated, that's the universe or God telling you that's not it. That's a sign. That's what you like. You take a moment and you're like, thank you for allowing me to feel the frustration. Go back to the origination of what I'm good at. That's how you get in line with the divine, where you cut out all the BS. And it becomes so magnificent. And we become these people where we may end up becoming co-creators. I don't know. That may be a thing, which would be amazing, where maybe we're going to get more free will. Who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the frustration thing, because for me, at least for me, when I feel frustrated, when I look at what exactly is causing the frustration, 9 times out of 10, it's that I am trying to force something instead of waiting to respond. I'm out there chasing things or chasing people. And that's that's been my biggest lesson with human design, is because I'm kind of a control freak, and being a
Sure.
manifesting generator, I want to go out and do the thing. But sometimes, a lot of the time, I really need to wait for that, thing to respond to, whether it's a job opportunity or an opportunity with my legal situation or whatever it may be. But it's so simple in that, like, people can look at human design and be like, that's too complicated, when really it's, your type,
Simple.
how you feel when you're not doing your strategy, and then your strategy, and that rest of it, like, it's all
Best.
nuance,
It's a huge marker. Even like I talk about this a lot during readings. I tell when we start talking about the human design, and you're a manifesting generator, the not self theme is frustration. And so there's this great poet. His name is Oscar Wilde. Maybe you've heard of him, right? He has this amazing quote. He says, this is for manifesting generators and generators, right? Primarily, hell is holding on, frustration, and heaven is letting go. So that's the motto of the manifesting generators is, if you start to experience frustration, what are you holding on to? Because the universe is telling you it's not the right time to do this idea that you want to do. It's not the right person to chase or to get into business with or to be intimate with. So so why did you send me this person? Like, you feel like you want to date this person, but the universe is like, that's not the right person. Then why'd you send them to me? Because I had to get you off your ass to start looking. I'm going to give you a little taste, a little tease.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get the idea. And then as the manifesting generator, you go within, and the initiation is like, what's coming down the pike. And it can be challenging. I look at manifesting generators, like when you go to the airport and you have your luggage and you're standing by the conveyor belt as it's going around and around, and you're seeing all these pieces of luggage come out, but you're looking for yours, but you're still seeing all the pieces of luggage. Those are our thoughts. And when you get really good at manifesting generator types, you can start to ignore all the other pieces of luggage. You'll recognize them, but you won't give them any energy, and you'll focus on your suitcase, your piece of luggage. That is the initiation. That is being one with the divine. But you need to close these little devils off, as I like to call them, and go into your meditation or your third eye to focus on that piece of luggage and that initiation. And that's what we're talking about, because when you get good at human design as a manifesting generator, manifester, you're supposed to stop when the frustration hits, and then go back to, let me go create something else. Like, how many times do we find that we're trying to figure a problem out, and you're just sitting there for hours and you're like, oh my God, I know it's here. That's frustration. It's not time yet. Put it away. Go back to it later. Simple stuff. And so that's the really easy example of manifesting generators. Like a projector is much different, because the projector, that's the type that has to wait for the invitation. Projectors, right? So they're the guides. They're supposed to wait for somebody to say, hey, what do you think about this? I'm glad you asked. Invitation, right? And you can manipulate that, because if you're a projector and you're a doctor, you just open up a doctor's office, and what's going to happen? People are going to say, hey, how much do you charge for this? Invitation, right? So you can kind of manipulate it as a projector. It's so amazing, the human design system. I love it.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a projector, and she has a consulting business. So she sets it up like that. You had mentioned that you like the manifesting generators best. For me, at least the most fascinating of all the types is the reflector. And that's probably because I'm, in love with the reflector, but like, they get to be, I don't know how much you've looked into it, but they get to be a little bit of everybody all throughout the month. They each have their cycle, and like one day they're going to be a manifestor, and the next they're going to be a projector. And it's like, that sounds so cool. And it's so interesting to witness that, in real time. And, they're super rare for a reason. But I'm curious, actually, on the human design thing, what's your idea of the whole 2027 thing? Have you looked into that?
I haven't. No.
Apparently 2027, there's going to be some major shift in the worldwide consciousness. And the best way I've heard it described to me is people who are aware of their design and doing their best to just honor that are going to have an easy time, whereas all of these people who are not aware of the way they work are going to be kind of rocked by it. And it's going to be a shift from this kind of like individualistic world to the community and, the way the brain kind of, because we're all kind of part of each other in some way. I've heard you say before, like, you're all the signs at some point or another.
Yeah, we're all, that's right. So if somebody says, what's your astrological sign? I'm all of them. What? Yeah. So if I pull up your chart, are you going to be just saying, I'm not Pisces? Where's your Pisces? Oh, there's nothing there. Doesn't mean it's still, you're being used by the Piscean energy, transits and all that stuff. So you're all the sign. The correct answer, in my opinion, is what's your sign? All of them. Yeah. That's the true answer. Right. But to talk about the 2027 is very interesting, because if you correlate 2025, this is the tarot card of 2025, which is a not so fun card, right? But it's transformation, right? But this is the card of 2025. So think about the year of the snake, right? Yeah. Now, head of the snake in numerology is 60, and this is the 60th card. So this is a very, very big pivotal year, very big pivotal year. So always years of the snake, man. 2001, September 11th, year of the snake, right? So very pivotal. But when you move into 2026, you're then getting into the 2027, excuse me, you're getting into the Knight of Swords. This is the card of revolution. So I'm not surprised that the human design community is talking about that, because this is the card of the dreamer. This is the Jesus card. The jacks are the Jesus, and the word Emmanuel, which is in Isaiah 7 verses 14 in theology, where they're proclaiming that somebody's going to come. Emmanuel is 62, and this is the 62nd card in the deck. So the return of the Christ is already here. It's happening around the world. It's part of the Anarchapulco, right? We're all part of that right now, and the revolution is already happening. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a big, like I said, I think this year could be a huge revolution. Part of it anyway, the ongoing aspects of it moving into 2027.
That's really interesting, because I've been anticipating eagerly the snake year, because roosters, snakes, and oxes are friends. And I actually waited until this year to really focus on fixing my legal situation. And while you were talking about the snake, I'm known for having these crazy dreams. And last night, a big part of the crazy dream was being surrounded by a bunch of snakes. And it's interesting how that came up in this conversation. Thinking about it, it's like, holy shit. Wow. So that's really interesting to consider. I am very, very curious. I do see something kind of big happening in this year in general, being
for sure
9 year, and that's all about endings and completion. And that's pretty apropos for, I've lived in Mexico almost 10 years illegally with this legal situation, and now gonna most likely end all these issues in a 9 year. It's wild. About the 9, I do have a question that was given to me from my partner about, he wants to know what your thoughts on the concept of enemy numbers are. For example, a lot of people say 9 and 11. When those two numbers get together, it causes chaos. You had mentioned 9/11 earlier. So what's your thoughts on the concept of enemy numbers?
Well, I feel that, like if you go to my website, cosmicsugar.org, I have a section on numerology. And if you click on that, it has the numbers 0 through 12, which is going to be expanding. And when you click on any number, it will tell you the liability and the asset of that number, meaning that each number is dualistic, which is what we are, right? We have a good side and a bad side. When you bring two numbers together, they play out the liability and asset on all levels. So I'm not somebody, as a fan of numbers and numerology, I'm not that guy to tell you these numbers don't get along or these signs don't get along. I think that's rubbish and it's absurd. Sure, you can have numbers come together and they can form the liability, and it becomes very, diabolical in a sense. But I mean, if you take September 11th, for example, if you move it into the Coptic calendar before the Julian calendar, September 11th is not 9 and 11, becomes 7 and 11, right? It's just how your perception is of that. So now you remove the 9 and 11, and now you're faced with the 7 and 11. The 7-Eleven convenience stores tied to the sun, right? The snake's tied to the sun, by the way, and Mercury. But anyway, I'm not somebody who looks at numbers, and I feel like these numbers, they can get along, they cannot get along. I look at them as archetypes. So if I break your name numerology down, with your birth certificate name, you're going to come up with a composite number. Most numerologists automatically reduce it down, but that's not the authentic aspect. The authentic aspect is taking like 9/11 and what does the 11 and what does the 9 mean? Well, the 9 from a liability side, yeah, it can get really grumpy and grouchy because it's like tired of doing it over and over and over and over again. It's the wounded warrior. It's like the old soul, many lives, many masters. The 9, it's the great repeater number. So of course, yeah, on the liability side, it can get very pissed off and angry and disgruntled. But on the positive side, 9 is a humanitarian number. So that's a very beautiful number. It's an old soul that wants to create a utopia. So it becomes an asset, right? And the same with the 11. The 11 is like looking at it's the one looking at itself. And it's obviously the root of that is the 2. So on a higher sense, it's the director of the 2, which is partnerships. When you're number 1, if you have a lot of number 1 energy in your life, you don't want to be in the subordinate position. And the liability of that is when you get second place, what kind of emotions do you give off? You get angry, you get pissed off, right? Well, how about not doing that next time? Like, I know you want to be first. I get it. I know that you're programmed to be number 1, but next time you don't get number 1, maybe have a little bit of humility in your life so that Mars doesn't steal your energy and Mars would be like, oh, wait a minute. This person's figured it out and now they're not giving me any food anymore. Well, and you continue to do it over and over. There may be some bliss in this. There may be where now you're going to be left alone because now you figured it out. Right. So that's like my long drawn on answer, but the numbers I feel they can get along. Same with the signs. Like when you talk about astrology, people say, oh, well, the moon is exalted here and Saturn's debilitated there. I know that that's a thing, but these things have been around, the ideas and concepts a lot longer than you and I. And you would think, well, if we can figure things out and harmonize, so can the celestials and the stars. Right. You would think they'd be able to get along. So I just put out my Zodiac Decoded and I'm for fun. I'm doing this comic book series of signs and Zodiac signs coming together and hugging. It's like the Zodiac hug and showing just the fun part of the dance of like Rahu and Venus, like embracing, and just having fun with it instead of getting mad and angry and disgruntled and pessimistic.
Yeah, I love that because another question I had, which I think it just ties up and was answered by what you were talking about, is a big disagreement that he and I have is with all of this occult stuff. We agree on most of it, but the big disagreement that we have, and I think you're going to understand exactly what I mean when I explain this, is the Chinese zodiac. There's the concept of you have the friends, and then there's the concept of the enemies. And the thing with the enemies is like, I'm kind of resistant to it. And maybe it's just because I'm a rooster and my enemy in the Vietnamese astrology is the cat. And I love cats so much. I literally have my cat tattooed on my arm, fucking love cats. But it's like, but beyond that, people born in the cat year, supposedly I'm not supposed to trust them or work with them. My sister is a cat. My best friend Henza, who you'll meet at Anarchapulco, who I saved his life. He was there when the shooting happened at my house and everything. I've saved his life. He saved my life repeatedly. He's a cat. I have a man that I call, who's lives in Acapulco. He's a Mexican. He's my Mexican dad. He's born in the cat year. And it's interesting because I'm like, I think that energy, I don't like to call it the enemy energy. I think that's incorrect. I feel it's more of like a perhaps conflict, but I also feel like it's a challenge energy. Those people, those energies, when they come into your life, they're here to bring lessons. And, and I'm coming as somebody who we had just finished Year of the Cat in 2023. That was technically my enemy year. And it was rough in certain regards, but I also experienced a hell of a lot of growth in that year and a hell of a lot of changes. And so it's like, for me, I'm curious to hear what you have to say about that whole, this person, or I'm an Aquarius, for example, in all of the things, I'm an Aquarius, right? Supposedly my enemy is the Leo, is that really the case? What do you think?
Well, my dad is an Aquarius and my mom's a Leo, and they've been married 54 years. So, I mean,
Yeah.
they've had their ups and downs, but I mean, it's a rarity these days to have that, right?
Yeah.
And those are opposites. So you have the opposites attract. How do we get these ideas that the cat is the enemy of the rooster? Well, one day somebody was a rooster and found out that they had this bad experience with a cat, and they came up with this idea, and they started to tell people, "Oh my God, I had this horrible experience with this cat person." Oh, so that started what's called a self-fulfilling prophecy in psychology. It's just an idea, an experience that you have, and then you tell somebody else, and they're like, "Oh my God, I had a nightmare with a cat as well." And now you have this nucleus of an idea, and that puts it into the world. But then you could take somebody else and say, "I'm married to a cat and I'm a rooster," and there are tons of people in this world that are. Right. Well, I know that to be a 1 + 1 = 2 fact, that there are roosters and cats that are married, that have been married, and they live a happy life for the most part. So I'm not one for that. I think that, you can look at a sign and you can make a determination on whether or not you want to move towards that person. Personally, I feel this is how we're getting into the refined perfection of life, is that we're taking all of these mystical systems, if you will, astrology, numerology, Enneagram, personality types, human design. And when you combine them all together, like baking a cake, you end up having this cake, and you taste it. And how does it taste? Well, the more layers you add to it, it can taste worse or it can taste better. And I feel the refinement of looking at all these systems is what we're moving into. I'm telling you right now, like, if you've ever seen the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, which was done by a book by Philip K. Dick, and that is about moving into a perfected society where they have a crime prevention unit. And is this going to be a thing? How could it be a thing? Well, because we're getting into the mystical arts, where it was kind of shunned in the Piscean age. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're now refining, because when you look at a cat or a rooster or a dog or an ox and you say, well, that's my enemy sign, well, then fine, if that's what you say. But when you become aware of all the code and you realize that anybody can be your enemy or anybody can be your friend, the thing about it is like, if you just live and let live, if I allow you to, like, how do relationships work the best? I'm not going to try to force my ideals upon you. But we do that as human beings. Why? Because we're trying to be right. Everybody's right. Everybody wants to be right. And you're trying to postulate your position, especially in relationships. Like, I don't agree. Cool. Let's just leave it at that. But no, but you gotta prove your point. And what do people do in relationships? They sacrifice love so they can be right. That's normally what happens in a relationship. Well, if you want to move into a utopian society, you got to realize that nobody's your enemy. Everybody's going to be somewhat your friend, and you don't have to be friends with them if you don't want to hang out with somebody who you feel like could be a bad association. You just could label it neutral. Like, I'm just not going to go that place. I'm not going to go there. But we're moving into refinement, where we're going to people are going to start using these concepts of astrology, numerology to prevent crime. How do they also, like, all the things we've been liking and your favorite? I can tell you exactly the person you are just by looking at your history of your YouTube. What kind of videos do you watch? I can tell exactly what kind of. But then I look at the astrology and I'm like, yep, there it is. Mm-hmm. My second house of astrology is occupied by Ophiuchus and Sagittarius. That's the house of money. How am I going to earn my money? By sharing wisdom. Sagittarius, Ophiuchus, the occult, the esoteric. That's how I'm going to earn my money. Right. And my second house and my Taurus is in my 7th house. So I'm going to do that through partnerships and being around people and balancing and symmetry and all that kind of stuff. So it's just so easy. So this is how we're going to be able to get along and realize there is no debilitation. There is no exaltation. It's just, we're just friends amongst friends, and you go do you, I'm going to go do me. But this is where you're going to get predictions and a one world society and the crime prevention unit, because people have already put out on the world stage everything they like, everything they buy, everything they spend their money on. It's already being pulled in. And then you add the astrology, numerology, birth certificate name, all these, human design. And then I have a map of this person. And I tell you right now, I'm telling you, businesses, and I've already done this. I've already gone into businesses, small companies, and I've been able to sit with people and determine, like, are you supposed to be sitting at this desk doing this job? A lot of people are doing the positions that they don't like because they're not they're not mapping with the true essence of their code. So this will be a thing in businesses. Businesses will start using this. There will be apps that will be created. Dating, for example. I've already been talking about this since 2013. Dating will be done by way of like what's your sign? I've been single for the longest time, and I have this joke. Like, I decode on the first date, right? Because I'm not going to spend any money or waste my time if I'm not kind of compatible with you, right? In the sense of what I know what I'm going to get. Because you can really look at a person's map and you can tell how they're going to show up and function. Not their traumas, because you can see it in the Chiron, but not the hidden skeletons. And so this is where the world's moving towards, to refine ourselves, to I know thyself. The age of Aquarius is I know thyself. And that's why these systems are coming back. The church during the Piscean age was like, we're going to set those tools aside and you're going to get the authority from us. And we're going to tell you what to do. Well, we're moving out of that, and you're moving into the age of the rise of the machines, which is using this as a tool to become one with, the essence of who you are. And it's going to be, if we get into the yugas, is there anybody that's going to be coming to the event talking about the Kali Yuga and the yugas and all that stuff that you know of?
Oh, to be honest, like, it's funny. I primarily do like the website and sponsorships and stuff.
Okay.
I occasionally, like, I'll get a bug up my ass and I'll like pester Rebecca to get somebody. This year it was you. But beyond that, I very rarely pay attention to what's actually going on the stage. So I have no clue.
No clue. Okay, I was just curious. Yeah, because that's another factor we can talk about. The yugas. Mm-hmm. Where are we at? Kali Yuga. Have we moved into the out of the Kali Yuga? It's very interesting to add that layer to seemingly moving into the age of Aquarius. Some people think we're there. Some people think we're not. I mean, to add the Yuga in there and talk about the Hindu is not Hindu, but the through the Bhagavad Gita and all that stuff. The beautiful layers of that is something very interesting to add to the flavor of things on the concepts of whatever environment's going to look like.
Yeah, it's interesting you talked about like decoding on the first date, like how all my other relationships that I ended up in, I just kind of ended up in them without really any logic. And they were pretty disastrous for the most part, almost lost my life in the one. But like this one I'm in now, that's how our relationship started, was like we met and then we started talking a little bit online. He was in one side of the planet, I was over here in Mexico, and it was basically like, hey, I'm into this numerology thing. What's your life path number? And we were just decoding each other back and forth. And I was like, oh, let me read your human design. And my brain, I'm like, he's definitely a manifesting generator. I looked it up and I was like, what's wrong with this chart? There's no centers defined. Oh, he's a reflector. Oh, he was just reflecting my own energy back to me, and it's, when you start on that level, though, like, yeah, it takes more work, in the initial. It's not all just like, what's your favorite color? And, like that sort of shit. But you can really learn somebody very well in a short period of time. And you can make an objective choice of like, is this somebody that I actually want to be with? Can I deal with this person's, indecisiveness, or this person's stubbornness, or whatever it is when it manifests in this way? Is that going to jive with me? Yes, no, and you can move on. I think it's beautiful that that's where we're moving towards, I think. And it's funny because there's so many dudes that are like, oh, it's a red flag if she asks you what sign you are. And I was like, it's a red flag that you're willing to refuse to look at that,
Yeah.
Why make it so much harder on yourself and be together with somebody for years that, oh, wait, you have, like human design, another thing I love about it, it's so good for compatibility. My relationship before this one, with that guy, I was 9-0, nowhere to go. That's not a fun situation to be in, Yeah. Whereas this current relationship, it's 8-1, have some fun. And it's really cool to, have these tools to have a good idea of what exactly can I expect here,
Totally. Yeah. Well, see, so the precursor. How did you get to this relationship that you have currently right now? Well, you got it from going on that path of like, oh, this wasn't really, you weren't using the human design. So what are you doing? You're refining.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
You're refining and the refinement is like forging the fires, baptisms of fire, dark night of the souls. this is the terminologies, but it's just life, man, happening, unfolding for you. And the beautification of that and the simplicity of that is in the system that we look at called the mystical arts, right? So,
yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. For me, it's been the single most fascinating and rewarding system out there. Because it's really cool when you can just like, okay, that's why that person is the way that they are. This is what makes them that way. And instead of trying to influence people to be how we think they can, like think they should be, it's you're gonna let them be who they are
that's
and
it.
let them go if it doesn't jive with you. And by doing that, you're just gonna attract in what does jive for you. Because if there's no space in your life, how you gonna and you also mentioned earlier something about letting go, and that's really interesting too, because my last 2 years, I've been letting go of the majority of my stuff. I sent my dog to live with my sister in Ohio because he's a gigantic fucking dog. Can't travel with him. Can't deal with the legal issues, worrying about him. But it's interesting because I was kind of a pack rat like my dad, and the more shit you hold on to physically, emotionally, people wise, all of that, the less you're able to actually get what you need.
Yep. Well,
Interesting.
I have a saying, it goes like this: ascension is severing ties with complexity.
Mm, I
So
like.
I'm a minimalist, right? So, and I've not always been this way. Is it permanent? I don't know. I'm just along for the ride. I'm on the bike and I don't hold the handlebars. I just pedal, right?
Mm,
So I've surrendered to that, but I'm a minimalist. So I'm a nihilist. I'm somebody who lives in neutrality, being lukewarm, where where, you know, you can look to your left and look to your right. And I'm somebody who is a minimalist. So, and it's given me the most blessings because, you know, when you start to collect things in your life and it becomes cluttered and complex, you have to like, oh, I want to move, right? Well, it's going to cost you more to move, or you have to have a garage sale. You have to take time out to do that. You got to sell your stuff. But when you don't have anything, you're free to move around. There's no burden, you know what I mean? You're free. So that it's not always going to be the beautification of life being a minimalist, and it's not for everybody. But I think that the ascension process really is severing ties with, and what I would call fool's gold. And in the stones, if you know, pyrite
I
is,
love pirate. That's hilarious. You use
yeah,
that
yeah.
example.
But that's fool's gold, right? So
Yeah.
and the fool in the tarot right here, this guy, this fool doesn't know what it's getting into. So there's beauty in that, because
Hmm.
it's the naiveness is, there's beauty in that, because like what let's go have fun. You don't have any resistance, you don't have any fears, so you're just like la 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 la. But when you start to collect things, materialism, you start to weigh yourself down, and now you start to form liabilities. Like if you buy a new car, yeah, there's the asset of it's new. It probably won't break down. You feel good driving it. It boosts your self-esteem. But the liability is it's going to cost more insurance, which means you got to make more money, earn more money, which means you have to work more hours. And that's weighing you down.
Hmm.
So if there's a happy medium in life, where is that for you as an individual, right? Asking everybody listening to this, where is that for you? Because minimalism is not for everybody. But to me, it's the path that was chosen for me. And because of it, what it's done for me has allowed me to really see, I don't have a lot of distractions. I don't have any pets. I have no partner. Right. And it's allowed me to give to the world the decoding. It's allowed me to give countless readings. I don't have to have anybody saying, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. My attention is on being a humanitarian, being somebody who is working for the world and moving it towards whichever way it's going. And because of that, it's allowed me a lot of freedom, or because of the freedom, it's allowed me to do that. So
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
I think everybody should go through a minimalist phase in their life. And I've had little versions of this. Like there's like from like 18 to 20, 22 or 23, I didn't have a cell phone, you
Oh,
know.
wow.
I was reading books, which is like fucking unheard of in this time, but I didn't have
Yeah.
social media. I didn't have a cell phone. The only reason I made a Facebook was to get in touch with the people in Acapulco, because when I contacted Jeff, he was like, everybody's on Facebook. And at first I was like, what the fuck? But like, there is, I think everybody should do a minimalist phase in their life, even if that's not what they do long term,
Yeah.
because there is that like freeing, like, okay, I don't, I had three pets. I had a cat that I gave to my former roommate that she hated me. I had my dog, who he's an amazing dog, but I didn't have the time, didn't have the space, and also my life is so volatile. And then I have one cat left, but you can travel much easier with one cat than you can with three animals.
Sure.
And I gave away 70% of my stuff, and I only have stuff that I use. And I think most people get so bogged down, especially in the sentimental items of like, oh, I wore these shoes for this year of my life and they were given to me by this. Not just get rid of them. Like if you're not wearing them, what the fuck?
That's it.
And I've been now on both sides of that because I was the person that would keep shoes for years after I was actually wearing them because they held memories. And it's like,
that's a huge thing. Sentimental.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal for people.
Yeah.
They don't want to let it go because, I mean, how many people have items in their closet and there's still tags on it? They have never worn it. Like, what are you keeping it for? Give it to somebody that can use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I joke about, and this is no offense to the women, God is a rich woman's closet because it has everything it wants. I got 5,000 pairs of jeans, but I don't have that pair. So I have that pair. Okay. 5,001. Cool. Right. Like, what are we trying to do? You're not going to go into the casket with all those things. So the quest of minimalism, I think, is important. I think you're right. I think everybody would be greatly benefited by experiencing minimalism in their life.
I think it's also like for so many years I was part of the abundance mindset, and I think the abundance mindset is a trap because when you're trying to manifest abundance, like you end up, and also it's a scarcity mindset. Like for so many years, my mom raised me on the phrase, if it's for free, it's for me. And we were just collecting. Somebody's like, hey, do you want these shoes? Oh, they don't really fit, but I'll take them. Hey, do you want this? Okay. And then you have all this shit that these random people are giving you that they don't want. Yeah. And I'm also learning that lesson of like, because my first instinct is like, okay, I'm going to give this to this person. But like, the reality is that abundance mindset is kind of a trap because it gets you tied to all this random shit.
Yep.
You don't even want. You didn't want in the first place. If you had, you'd have gone out and bought it, and that's been another real interesting, real big rabbit hole to go down is like, do we want abundance or do we want, something different? And I don't know, the word's not coming to mind. I've had this conversation with others. It's not abundance. Maybe it's growth or it's, building wealth or something like that. Like most people, they're like, oh, I want abundance. And it's like, no, that's just opening the door and letting all this shit fly at you. You want to intentionally, like manifestation, you want to manifest the specific things that actually play into your little puzzle that is life. I like to talk about all of these modalities together. My favorite metaphor is we're all these soups. We're all different soups, and we all have different ingredients and different techniques going into make the soup. And then as a result, we all have different flavors. But at the end of the day, we're all still soup.
Great metaphor. Let's have a big cook-off. Let's have a big cook-off.
Yeah, I mean, and this is me, one of the things I did when I first moved to Acapulco for money was I had a restaurant in my house and I was having anarchists come up to my house and I was feeding them because I was able to cook all the food they couldn't have in Mexico anymore, including I was making Taco Bell style Mexican food with high quality ingredients. People loved it. So my brain, of course, is going to think of cooking metaphors when it comes to these things. That's just naturally where I go. But yeah, I really, really loved having this conversation with you. And I'm really glad that you took the time out to do this.
Yeah, me too. I'm very grateful. So, I think our banter was really, really good going back and forth. You have a lot of great ideas. I love the 7 of diamonds. One of my really great friends, Jordan at Waters Above, big shout out to him. He's a 7 of diamonds. So, I know a little bit about how you roll and all that kind of stuff. But again, it's very complex because it's not just the cards, but it's the complete systems that we bring together. So, yeah.
Okay. So my final question before we wrap up is, what are you looking forward to most at Anarchapulco?
Just meeting people, schmoozing, because I've been doing this kind of conversation with people for so long. And I'm a hermit. So even in Mexico, I spend a lot of time in front of the computer,
Mhm.
and not enough time with other people. I'm a
Yeah.
loner. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a hermit. So for me, I want to, and I want to start traveling and start doing this. So, there's other events I'm going to be doing. That's 2025 travel and schmoozing and rubbing elbows and sharing and laughing and having a good time, hugging and shaking hands and just listening to other concepts, but just being around people. That's like the biggest thing for me. Just to be around real people is going to be a blessing for me.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me why still after 10 years, especially because I've had so much trauma in Acapulco and wrapped up in Anarchapulco. They're like, why do you still do this? That's a big part of it because the people that are I built my own family out of the people I founded Anarchapulco, this worldwide network. And like, that's the reason I keep doing it. And it's funny because I get to a point every year as one of the co-producers, just grinding my way through like, man, why do I still do this? I'm so tired. And then when I'm there, I'm just like, oh, this is why I fucking do this. This is why I do this. So and I will end this by saying, I'm not going to reveal what it is because it's a surprise, but I have thought of a gift that I'm making and bringing to you that I know is going to make you laugh.
Oh,
And I'm excited.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
I
So,
appreciate that.
yeah. So
That's
looking
awesome.
forward to meeting you next month for
Yeah,
sure.
let me ask you, I'm just throwing this out there. Do you guys do name tags at the event? I've never been to the event, but do
We
they
do.
do name tags? Or?
We do. We have them printed by like a local thing, and it's, basically with your name. But we can, if you want, because I'm the person that compiles the list to do all that. I'm like the systems. I do the email, I do the social media, uh I
I
wear
lost your sound. I don't
I
know
wear
why.
like I wear
Oh, there
like
you go.
yeah, you're all right. I wear like 17 different hats in Anarchapulco. One of them is compiling that list for the guy that takes them and gets them printed. So if you want something special on yours, you just let me know.
No, it's just like I've done events with people, smaller groups, and what I thought was really cool is like having a name tag, but having your life path on there and your sun sign in astrology, and
Oh
and
man.
yeah, so you look
Oh,
at somebody
that's
like,
a
oh,
great idea. I wonder.
you're a 9. Oh, you're a 5. Okay. So you get to know them a little bit, like, oh, you're a manifesting generator. And then you instantly can say, hey, I want to go talk to that person because I'm a manifesting generator. I think it's just really kind of cool.
We'll put it this way, like I don't like I Anarchapulco has been a huge part of my life, but I see myself eventually moving on and starting my own sort of event or partnering with somebody. And that would be my preferred way to do it, is having that be the basis of it and it be less about, okay, here's these presentations and sit and listen to this person, and more be like there's a whole second week to Anarchapulco called Agora Forco that's kind of what it's dedicated. Everybody with a ticket can put their shit on the calendar and you can just decide who you're going to give your time and attention to during that week. And I think that, getting to the heart of who people actually are and finding good ways to interact, that right there is the secret sauce. And I am definitely waiting for the perfect opportunity to jump out and do something like that, because
That
that
sounds
should be the
amazing.
way it is. Yeah, that should
Well,
be.
that's what I have in mind, like to do event. Like I'm going to be doing events, and that's kind of the ideas that I want to bring out is so people can start to like, for instance, I'll leave you with this. In a deck of playing cards, right? There are 13 cards per suit, ace through king, right? So I had this idea where I'm going to get all the diamonds, ace through king, as a round table. I'm going to get all the ace through king of the clubs and the hearts, and this forms a circuit. And these are, if you don't know, there are 52 cards in a deck. There are 52 weeks in a year. There are 4 suits, there are 4 seasons, and there are 13 cards, and there are 13 weeks per season. So these are very, very much an oracle, and they are very much embedded into nature. So these are the things that I want to start creating with people is round tables and creating organizations so we can start to come together and really bridge the gap on understanding our realities a little bit deeper.
Well, I mean, if you need help with your event, I am down because I love the idea of that, and I love working with people like and another big reason why I keep working with Anarchapulco is my boss is my best friend. And we work really, which is rare. We work really well together in a professional sense. We get things done, but we also like we know way too much about each other's personal lives down to like people always look at me funny, but I'm like, I know where her digestion is at almost every day and vice versa because of how close we are. But like, for me, the sauce in life is doing work like this and getting to do work with people that I actually respect and like. So I would love to help you on those things if you
Well,
want.
I appreciate that. Well, it's going to happen. It's happening. There's the idea is to do one here in Cancun, an event in Cancun, because you got the hotel zone and everything all inclusive and all that stuff. It's just, I'm not the event planner. Like I've been talking about this for so long. I'm not that. Yeah, I'm not that guy. I just like that's not my thing. Yeah, it's not my
Yeah.
thing. I just want to show up. You know, I have great ideas, but I just want to show up and I just really, like I said, the main reason why I'm coming to Anarchapulco is because it's time to start meeting people in person and bringing back that hug and handshake. You know,
It's interesting that you say you just want to show up because it's funny because from the outside, a lot of people look at the event and they're like, oh, it's Jeff's event. And they're always like, thank you for planning this and putting this on. Jeff has just gotten really good at hiring people and he just shows up. And it's me and it's my team that do all of the work to make it all work, to have the guest list and have the website and the ticketing system and the registration and all the
a
things
lot,
that make
man.
it's a lot. But like my brain, for whatever reason, that's my favorite job. Like I wish I could make more money, but like it's my favorite job because I just thrive in that chaos of like I have 15 things to do all at once, but manifesting generator, I'm going to do them all at the same time.
Sure. Well, there's your Rahu and Ophiuchus, you know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to take up too much more of your time because I told you it'd be 45 minutes to an hour.
I don't care, man. You know, I do 4, 5, 6 hour podcasts. So this is nothing for me. It's a breeze.
Yeah, I appreciate this so much. I am so excited to get this over to Adam, who edits these and puts them up for us because like this has been a blast. So I'll see you in Acapulco.
Yeah. I
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Sounds great.